Transcendental Transformation, the place where spirituality and transformation unite. Host Miss Raina imparts truth so that you can break through your limiting beliefs and evolve into a deeper consciousness. As you go about your day, remember, before every breakthrough, there is a breakdown. And now, let's start the show.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's episode of Transcendental Transformation. I'm your host, Miss Raina, and today is Tuesday, June 1st, 2020. As always, we are coming live from the Sirius Star System studios right here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and I hope all is well with everybody. Well, the reason why I'm taking a deep breath is because there is a lot of chaos going on right now in the world, especially in the United States. And, we just were dealing with the coronavirus, and now we are dealing with riots all over the United States. And, it is a very challenging time. It is a very chaotic time, it seems like. And there is a lot of protesting going on. There's a lot of looting going on. There's been fighting. There has even been people getting killed. And it is all because of a man named Greg Floyd who was killed by a cop I believe in Minnesota. And it is a sad thing when this type of situations happen. But these things happen in this world, and we are going to get into why these things happen in this world and why so much of this chaos is going around right now a little bit later. But yes, it is a very chaotic time, and I know me, I have stayed off social media because I have seen a lot of people fighting back and forth, and a lot of people have very strong opinions, and sadly sometimes people's energies and upsetness and anger turns to hate, and that's when we got to separate ourselves, because everybody who listens to this show is trying to grow. We're trying to move past all this fighting, past all this chaos, and that doesn't mean we have to get into this chaos. And that's kind of what I've been doing. I've been laying low off social media as well, just kind of posting things for the businesses I need, and just kind of meditating and doing my thing, because that's where we need to focus on. Unfortunately, for many people, they are contracted to go through certain things, such as what's going on right now. And we're going to get into global contracts, because what's going on right now is a global contract, and you're going to find it a little bit interesting. But yes, we got to make sure that things like George Floyd and don't ever happen again, because we know they've happened so many times in the past. So let's pray for the family and hope that everything starts to pan itself out a little bit more without any more killing or anybody else getting hurt. We are doing a homeless drive, I believe, next week. I don't know if we're going to be able to get to it this week. But I know that we're supposed to get to it. We're going to get to it either this weekend or next week sometime. And so we got clothes, and we always are welcoming more clothes, blankets, shoes, anything that you guys got, just as long as it's wearable for people who are homeless. We also started a donation page for GoFundMe under Spirit Communities. So if you want to donate to the cause and donate to help homeless, especially with what's going on right now, I noticed that there was a video that I was sent to by Caleb, and I think I've seen one or two others. And people who are looting and rioting are actually taking people, like homeless people's beds and clothes and stuff, and lighting them on fire and stealing from them and everything like that. And this has to stop, because this is a very sad thing. I mean, I understand there's some people feel that there's a big injustice, and there was a big injustice done, but we can't let ourselves get caught up into this and to take away from people who have nothing already. So please, people, find it in your hearts to give something. Go to GoFundMe, find spirit communities, and give anything, even if it's $5-10, anything helps at all. And therefore we can go back out on the streets and replace what a lot of these homeless people are losing on the streets because of these riots. So we'd really appreciate it. So, all right, guys, as always, we are coming live from Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Periscope, and LinkedIn. Caleb is on Facebook Live and Twitch, and he is going to be on there and answering all your questions. So if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to hit him up, and we will talk about them live on the show. All right, so we got a lot to get over because there is a lot to go over today. And last week we were talking about contracts, and the last thing we were talking about was how people, want things to be a certain way, and how we don't accept our lives or our situations for what they're supposed to be. We're always wanting to try to, we're always trying to think of the future, and we're always trying to make our lives to be out something that they're not. And when we do this and we fight with this, we always cause chaos, we always cause friction, because we're trying to force something that isn't meant to be or isn't happening yet. Maybe what you're trying to force will come into fruition, but won't happen maybe for another 5, 10, 15 years. You don't know. But the fact is a lot of us, we will push this against our contracts. And that's where we let ourselves out to be last time, because we sat there and we were like, if we're meant to be something, or if we want something, we're taught in society that we're supposed to be going after it and constantly doing something about it and constantly trying to make something. Yes, that is partly true, but a lot of it has to do with our contract as well. And sometimes, we want ideas, we want to be something that we're not meant to be. And this is hard for us, because a lot of times we're chasing our dreams, we're chasing these things, but we're really chasing the feeling of being without. And we kind of went into it a little bit, about how when we're without and everything like that, we kind of things become much larger and they be than normal. So in other words, we want to grasp for something harder, because we're so desperate that if we don't become this thing, that all of a sudden, it means that we're not who we said we were. And a lot of times we're maybe not meant for that one particular thing, but we're meant for something else. And it's really for us to figure out what it is, what it is we're meant for. And these contracts, although they're set in stone, and a lot of them, the fake contracts are set in stone, and a lot of them will bring us down the path, there are many choices. There are many choices and everything that are going along that fake contract. And so we have to be able to understand that. We have to be able to understand where our path is taking us, and that we're not chasing that without. So if we get into tonight's contracts, we really have to, when we're not accepting who we are or where we're at, we're not accepting or understanding the lessons that are supposed to be. So what does that mean? That means that, when we're chasing these ideas that I'm supposed to be this or I want to be this, what ends up happening is we're missing everything that we're supposed to be learning here in the world. And a lot of times we do that. A lot of times we're so focused on the future and what we want to be and all these dreams, because we don't want to focus on the now, because the way we look at ourselves, let's face it, many of us are unhappy with who we are. Many of us are very unhappy with who we are, where we're at in life, our jobs, our relationship situation, and we always want to be someplace else. And we're not accepting where we're at now, because now is the most important time. Now is the exact moment that we're supposed to be learning something in order for us to make that transition to where we need to go. And so if we're sitting there focusing, on the future and focusing on what we don't have, we miss everything that we're learning. And one of the examples that I like to give is my Padawan. When he first came to me, he always wanted to be this this teacher and this enlightened one and everything like this, and he had such this drive and ambition to do all these things. Well, it looked like it was a drive and ambition from one point of view, but when you really broke it down, it was chasing something and wanting to be something rather than understanding who we were now and understanding that we had to go through certain things in order to be this, because it doesn't take 5-6 months and we're all of a sudden enlightened and we are supposed to go and pass this information down. And that's what a lot of us do in this world. We think if we hear something so much that we have a complete understanding of it, and it must be true because the whole world accepts it. And so we're going to go out and chase our without, ignore what our path is sometimes, fight against it, and we want to become these enlightened ones because that means status to us. That means if we're going around teaching us, people are looking at us, we're successful, we're enlightened, and all this and all these different ideas. And this was really hard for him because when I told him that, unfortunately, it's not your path to become enlightened during this time, and it's going to take many, 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 many lives in order for you to become enlightened, because it takes a lot of us, many tens of thousands of lives, sometimes way even more, in order for us to become this thing called enlightened. And a lot of times we think that if we become these things, it makes us there, and so we fight against it. And it was really hard for him. And it wasn't that we were trying to say, well, you can't achieve certain things or you can't do certain things, but the whole focus was that you wanted to be something, but you're not understanding who you are and what you're supposed to be during this lifetime. And a lot of times we take that as a knock. And so we're missing the most important lessons in our lives. We're missing who we are instead of who we're trying to be. And that kind of learning always causes chaos in us. And so we have to really get that through our head. We have to really understand that in our heart and in our mind, that it is not important for us to be these successful ones that all these people are just admiring to us and everything. When we're chasing that idea, we're missing the lessons at hand. And these type of contracts are really hard for us because when we're fighting against this is what always causes chaos. When there's something that that's just not a miss, but you're going to keep pushing at it anyways, it's always going to be that way. And so, and I know for many of us, I know many people, especially many of my students, have asked me, they said, and I think mostly everyone's done this, especially in relationships, right? How many of us have tried in relationships trying to be with someone, and because we were so infatuated with them that wasn't meant to be, and we pushed and we pushed and we pushed, and maybe we ended up being with that person, but it wasn't anything what it was just complete chaos, complete turmoil, complete everything. And that is because we're trying to rewrite a contract. We're trying to force ourselves into something that we're not meant to be. Remember, life is always about duality. And so we're supposed to be in neutrality. So we have a light side and a dark side that constantly has to be in balance with one another in order for us to gain every perspective. And when we get out of our contract, when we start to stray away from our contract or start to fight it, this is exactly what happens. We're trying to force something that happens and we can't do it. So I always sit there and say, think of this, okay? Say like you want so bad, say like we're in school, right? And when we're young and we're in school, hey, college sounds amazing or high school sounds amazing. Wow, I can't wait to be in high school. I can't wait to be in college. I can't wait to do all these things. But maybe we're supposed to be in 6th grade, right? So we're dreaming about being in college and we're dreaming about all this stuff, and we're so focused on where we want to be instead of where we are now that we're missing the lessons that we're supposed to learn in 6th grade. So in 6th grade, say like we're supposed to learn, I don't know, some type of, let's just say, I know we learn this actually younger, but let's just say we're supposed to learn basic math, addition, subtraction, multiplication and stuff. Well, if you're missing the basic principles of math, addition, subtraction, then multiplication and division, because you're so focused on wanting to be, in and ignoring the contract of where you're supposed to be at now, and you're so focused on trying to be a college student, then you miss all the ingredients in order for you to get there. Because in order for you to get to college, you have to pass 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, etc., all the way through. And you can't pass those grades until you master that particular set of information. That is no different than these contracts, and this is no different than your life. So your life is guided by these contracts. And the more you try to fight them, the more chaos ends up happening. The more it actually ends up hurting you. And then you miss all these lessons. And this is important to understand, because so many of us are fighting these contracts. You look at it, and anywhere there is chaos in your life, there is an imbalance due to you not understanding the contract that you're in, or not understanding the contract that you came from. And that's so important, and we'll get into that a little bit later. So let's talk about free will versus destiny versus choice, right? Because everyone is always about that. Well, where is free will? Where is destiny or fate? And where is choice? Well, choice and free will are pretty similar, right? But it is a little bit different. So everyone debates about how much free will we have, right? It's always there. Well, some people say we come here with total free will, and some people come here and say, well, there's no free will. It's all fated. Everything is fated. And you know what? There is a lot more that is fated in our lives than we think. That doesn't mean we don't have free will and choice, because we do. But there's a lot of things in our life that is fated. There's a lot of things that we don't have choice over, because things are supposed to happen to us in order for us to grow. If we had a total choice on everything, life would be totally chaotic. Because that means there would be no rhyme or reason to life, that everything has probability or chance to it, and there would be no order. Well, as we know in life, there has to be an order. There has to be structure. And trust me, I am very structural in many ways, and a lot of times I rebel against structure because it's too constricting. So I get it. And there are times that I even battle with with fated contracts, because it gets inside of me. Hey, I want that free will, I want that choice, but there are some things we have to learn to accept that are fated. So what are fated things? What are these things that are fated that we are guaranteed fate? So our personality, our personality of who we are, the way we're born, what we look like the day we're born with, who our parents are, who our sisters and brothers are, who our relatives are, those are all laid out contracts. Okay, even who we date is a laid out. Every person that you ever date, and even the people that you marry, if you get divorced or whatever, all of those are laid out contracts. Everything is pre-written when it comes to that stuff. Now, there's one thing that I want to talk about when I come to personality, and that's personality contracts. And we won't get too far into that because we got a lot to cover. And maybe I'll put it on a session show. I don't know. But personality contracts are everybody's personality, the way we are, the type of person we are, who we're going to get along with, who we're going to rub up against, are actually contracted. There are athletic contracts, people who are born to be athletes and famous and all that stuff. There are loser contracts, and everyone always laughs at me when I say that. But there is a contract actually called the loser contract. And the loser contract are people who are, a lot of times lose in life. They mess up on everything, whether it be drugs and alcohol. They can't get a job. Their life is just always a mess, etc. And there is that. There's also a winner contract, where everything someone seems to do, it just always seems like they're always on fire. And there's so many. There's people who like comedians and different things, people who are funny. Those are personality contracts. You're contracted to be a certain personality type. because, there's the studious contracts, because those contracts are meant for people who are meant to go, in an educational system, maybe physics or being a teacher or whatever, or a doctor or whatever. There's a lot of different contracts and a lot of different personality types. And that's the reason why so many of us, and I'm guilty of this before in my past, but how many of us have just looked at somebody and you don't know why, but they just rub you the wrong way. You don't know them at all. You don't know their personality. You don't know anything about them, but you just look at them and it rubs you the wrong way. Well, that's because your soul understands that their personality contract and your personality contract, differ, and a lot of times repel each other. And so it's this instinctual spiritual thing that says, this is driving me nuts, but you don't know why. So, well, all right, guys, let's take a break, and we'll be right back after these messages from the life of Raina.
A message from the life of Raina. We live in a world faced with many tough challenges. Our lives become chaotic and filled with disaster ever so quickly, most of the time before we even realize. Our issues beat down our mental mindset, and an imbalance of emotions become prevalent. The life of Raina is dedicated to helping people on the deepest spiritual level. Miss Raina, the creator of Transcendental Development and Growth, works on your core issues and finds the solutions which allow you to break free from the emotional bondages of life, helping you achieve the life you've always wanted to live. Isn't it time that you lived life for you? Call the Life of Raina, 561-846-2190, and schedule your appointment today. That's 561-846-2190. Or email thelifeofraina@icloud.com.
All right, everybody, we are back, and we were talking. I'm your host, Miss Raina, and you are listening to Transcendental Transformation. I almost forgot that, but that's all right. So we are talking about personality contracts and personalities, and you are the way you are for a reason. I am the way I am for a reason. And this is what's so important, because you have to learn to develop a love for yourself based on your contract. And, and that's the other thing, is we envy and we awe at other contracts for people who are athletes, or people that are rich, or doctors, or people that just have these introverts. I am mostly both. I have a big introvert side, but I also once in a while have an extrovert. I used to be all extrovert when I was young, and I slowly transitioned because I chose to transition to an introvert for different reasons. But we have all these things that we look at, and we have all these contracts that we're doing. And so you have to understand what kind of personality you are. You have to understand these things, and in order to accept it, because there are things that we don't accept a lot about ourselves, and there's a reason for that. So I want to say that before you start to look at, I wish I was this way and I wish I was that way, you weren't meant to be that way. If you were, you would have been born that way, and you are the one who created that. I know maybe some of you haven't listened to part 1 of the contracts, of this part of the agreements and contracts and everything like that, and maybe you're just catching this show. But if you go back and listen, you are the responsible soul of your contract. That means you write out everything. And a lot of people have a hard time with this, because it's easier to say a god or a goddess or a universe or some powerful energy created me like this, so there must be a master plan. But you are the one who actually creates everything about your life, from the most painful times to the most joyous, to who you're going to date, to who you're not, where you're going to live, because it's your soul growing. It's your soul evolution, and you understand on the other side where you have to go without judgment. And when we get back to the other side, you may fight with me on this now, but when you get back to the other side, you'll understand. You'll go back to the way you actually are on the other side, and you'll say, okay, well, now I remember remember that I'm the one in control of my evolution. And so what's my next life? Who am I going to be? Am I going to be a male? Am I going to be a female? Am I going to be, thin, overweight? Am I going to be what ethnic race am I going to be? What problems am I going to have? What jobs? What capabilities? And we actually plan all these out. We actually plan all this out because destiny or fate contracts is an outline of your life. It's an outline from it's almost like a book. You have the beginning of the book, the middle, and the end, and the chapters. And all these chapters combined is your life, all from beginning to end. It's like a big book. And as you turn each page, it's like your life going through. And all these things in the book make up a story. Well, all these contracts make up your story of who you are during this lifetime. So we have to look at that. And so, a lot of times, I know a lot of us are struggling with jobs and everything like that right now. And, some of us don't have a problem, but your jobs are predetermined. That's why next time you go on an interview, next time you're doing something, if you don't get it, don't get upset at it because it's not meant to be. It is not the job that you're meant to have. When you're meant to have something, it will come in because that is what you wrote in it. So I want you to really, truly understand that. So let's talk about free will for a second. And I know, guys, I'm going a little bit fast because I have so much to cover. And really, this is the bare bones of life, of these contracts and agreements. But they're so in-depth that I could literally probably talk about contracts for at least 15 weeks. I probably can and still not even get through it. They are so... they have so much depth to them that it's just a lot to go over. So I'm going to try to go over as much as I can because I really don't want to go over to a third week with this. But free will. So where does free will come in? Well, free will is choice, right? Free will is choice, right? It's the free will to choose what it is. Free will comes in after the fate. Okay, it's always fate comes in, gives us an opportunity to experience something, whether we deem it to be chaotic, whether we deem it to be happy, whether we deem it to be sad, whatever the experience is, whatever the situation is. Then free will comes in and allows us to say, hey, this is the choice that I'm going to make. This is how I'm going to choose to interact with these lessons. So if I'm going to choose that, hey, this happened to me, and I'm going to choose how I'm going to react to it, how I'm going to interact with the people that are there. So a lot of times, like maybe we've had a bad boyfriend or a bad girlfriend, or we have a horrible job that we just don't seem to get away from. Well, that is a lot of times our choice. We are choosing to stay with that. Or maybe we've had a horrible relationship, and the next thing we know, all of a sudden we just are angry. We break up with the person, we're just bitter, and all men suck or all women suck, and we're just going to blame everything, all of our anger and pain and suffering on the opposite, on whoever we're dating, even the same sex maybe. And and these are the things. And so we have that choice of how we're going to react and interact from here on out. Because are we understanding the lesson? Are we understanding the contract that is? And how we look at ourselves and how we're going to work on ourselves through this. If we're going to choose to always blame the other people for our problems, then we're not going to learn anything. And remember how we talked a little bit about cycle contracts last week? Well, guess what? You're now starting a cycle contract because the cycle contract will come back because it's meant to repeat itself because we're not understanding the lesson of the contract. And so this is what we think a lot of times is karma, but karma is not what we think, people. We have a huge misconception here in the United States of karma. We think it's a punisher. Oh, haha, karma's going to come out to get you. Don't worry, karma's going to get them. I'm sorry, people, that is not karma, and we have such a little understanding of what karma truly is. Karma does not punish, and it does not come after. Contracts do not punish. We view things as punishment because that's what society tells us, because that's what the victim in us tells us. So our free will is how we're going to choose to react to things, or how we're going to handle things, how we're going to accept things, how we're going to treat people on a daily basis. Do you treat people nice, or do you think they're all stupid? I mean, I know what's going on with a lot of the riots right now. I'm seeing some very nasty things where I've had to, unfortunately, unfriend quite a few people I've known for quite some time because I never thought that they were that racist. And I'm a person that understands that, people are angry right now. There has been hundreds of years of suppression. I mean, the Civil War was just in 1865. We're still having the remnants of that. And so, that was just in our backyard. And so there is a lot of anger from a lot of people, and maybe they don't handle it correctly, but you have to start thinking on a deeper level. And because people are so wrapped up in their injustice and their justification, how are they handling these type of contracts? How are they? And they're not. And so these type of things keep recycling back into their cycle contracts because they have not learned to yet walk away, to accept people and ideas and things for what they really are and not dive into the anger and suffering. And unfortunately we do. And even, I even told Caleb today, when we were texting, he mentioned something about what's going on. And I said, well, that's not our problem. That's not something we need to worry about. And, and the reason why I said that is because as sad as this is going on, what's going on is not part of my contract. And that's the funny thing about contracts, is just because there's world contracts or global contracts, which we'll get into in a little bit, does not mean that you have to be a part of it. Does not mean just because the world's taken place in it that you have to be a part of. I was not part of the coronavirus, and I was not part of this. And I'm not part of a lot of things because that is not my contract. But when you feel the need that you got to join up and do stuff, and that you make a contract from fate into yours, and we'll get into that in a little bit. So I want to talk about something, and I'm going to put a trigger warning about this because we're going to talk a little bit about abuse, because I want to give an example about how our free will compare to fate. And I want to talk about abuse because I myself grew up in abuse a little bit, or actually a lot, and I know many of you do. So I'm putting the trigger warning. If you're sensitive to abuse talk, please put mute on for a little while. I'll give a thumbs up when I'm done, and then you could put the mute back on or mute back off. But so let's get into this. So say like we're in an abusive relationship, a really abusive relationship, and this type of thing, when it first happens, it's a fake contract. You are meant to be in this. Okay, and then all of a sudden, after the aggression happens, and the fighting happens, the abuse happens, you have a choice at a certain point. Now it becomes a choice contract, and you have a choice whether or not you want to stay with this person or not. And a lot of times, the challenge is because you think you love them. But what's really happening is what you've written in the contract is for you to think that you love the person because this person has manipulated you into many different things. And so they make you feel that way, but that's part of the contract. They make you feel like you are having... like you love them and you need them, but in reality it's your choice to move on. It's your choice to see what's going on in reality, and your choice to understand that this person doesn't love you because they're hurting you, they're causing you chaos, they're doing this, but you're choosing to stay. And the choice has to be made in realization that once you realize that you have the power, and that you no longer want to be with something like that or someone like this, you can walk away. And that is how a fake contract becomes a choice becomes choice or free will. So fate always introduces you. I want you to remember that. Any time in life you're introduced to an experience, that is fate. Once you have been introduced and you've experienced it, now how you react to it, what you think about it, how you're going to treat people, how you're going to further react to other people from here on out is all choice and free will. And that's difficult because a lot of times we do it to ourselves. We create these cycle contracts in our own lives because we refuse to see what is going on. So there is also a point in abusive relationships that is just fated. You ever watch some of the ID channel stuff, and I'm a big ID channel stuff, and you see these people that just can't get away from the people that are really abusive. They just love them, and no matter what they do to them, they can't see what's going on until they maybe get murdered or end up, and these are fake contracts, and no matter what anyone says to somebody, they just can't let it go. They just can't see it. It's because in their contract they're not meant to, because there's a conclusion that needs to be met. And so once this conclusion is met, then the contract falls away because the conclusion has been met. But during that time, there is nothing in the world you can say to this person or do to this person that is going to make them see differently. And so this is your choice now how to react to that. So, okay, so we're done with that. So anybody who wants to come back, and we're no longer talking about abuse. So let's get into cycle contracts, because cycle contracts, we were just kind of talking about them, and I think it's really important to kind of clarify what's going over. So as I said before, cycle contracts repeat over and over. And a lot of times they're often destructive. We look at them as being negative or punishment, but they're not. They're destructive in our minds because we see them as causing chaos. But cycle contracts are all about free will. It's all about choice. It's all about, can I break this cycle? Can I break this habit? Can I break these ideas in order for me to get out of the contract? Because again, remember, we have free will, but we have to recognize what's going on. And so we look at these things as habits or addictions. A lot of people who struggle with addictions and toxic habits and stuff are often under major cycle contracts. And so when you see someone that just constantly goes back to and just seems to fail all the time at their, they're just like, oh, well, I'm sober, and then all of a sudden they fail again. Oh, I'm sober, and they fail. They're in a cycle contract, they have to realize that that the contract is nothing more than just showing them to find strength within themselves. Unfortunately, for a lot of us, we go to drug rehab places, and they all try to push a belief system down your throat, and it keeps them in that contract, because remember, the cycle contracts are trying to teach you about not being a victim. It's trying to teach you independence. It's trying to teach you personal strength. You cannot get out of a cycle contract as long as you see yourself as the victim. What is the victim? The victim is someone who doesn't believe that they can do it. A victim is someone who has to rely on a god, a goddess, or someone else to get them out of it, or think that they're just gonna, pray to something or do something or go to something, and it's just going to be magically done for them because they don't have the strength to do it. Cycle contracts are meant to teach people that you have the power, that you are in control, and until you figure that out, you are going to repeat the cycle contract over and over and over. And that's usually when you just say, you know what? I've had enough. I'm done. I am done with this. I don't care anymore. I have learned what I need to learn, and that's what it is. And a lot of times, as you guys know, I had a wild lifestyle for most of my lifestyle. I dabbled into a lot of stuff, and I've met a lot of people who were addicted to sex, and sex was this thing that they used to feel and to feed off them, to feed on people, and and it was one of these things that a lot of times you could see that maybe they didn't have the the bonding to family or parents, or they had something that was missing, but sex kind of gave them this drive. And some people just have a naturally high sex drive, and I'm not saying sex is bad or having a lot of sex is bad. I am not saying that, because I do not judge what others do, but I'm just using this as an example. And so they use sex to fill the void, and a lot of people do, and I've met many people who have and I even used to do that at one point in my life. And I used to fill it because it gave me what was missing, and I used to sit there with my feelings, and then it would go away, and I'd be like, oh man, and I would repeat. And same with a lot of my other people, or a lot of the other people that I knew. And some people don't care who they hurt because the cycle contract is hard to get out of. It seems chaotic because it's this repetitive thing that you know that it's not healthy for you to do, but you do it anyways because it's this irresistible urge to just do it. And that's that urge, because the contract is trying to force you to look at yourself and say, you know what, I'm stronger than this. I need to get away from this. That doesn't mean I have to go from, having all sorts of sex to nothing at all for the rest of my life. But it means that I have to do certain things in order for no matter what it is, shopping, eating, maybe some people like spending money, whatever it is, whatever it is that people can't control. A lot of times those are cycle contracts. So, let's go to commercial, because before I talk about global contracts and everything and kind of what's going on in the world, I think it's a good time for a commercial. So we'll be right back after these messages from the life of Raina.
A message from the life of Raina. We live in a world faced with many tough challenges. Our lives become chaotic and filled with disaster ever so quickly, most of the time before we even realize. Our issues beat down our mental mindset, and an imbalance of emotions become prevalent. The life of Raina is dedicated to helping people on the deepest spiritual level. Miss Raina, the creator of Transcendental Development and Growth, works on your core issues and finds the solutions which allow you to break free from the emotional bondages of life, helping you achieve the life you've always wanted to live. Isn't it time that you lived life for you? Call the Life of Raina, 561-846-2190, and schedule your appointment today. That's 561-846-2190. Or email thelifeofraina@icloud.com.
All right, everybody, we are back for the last part of Transcendental Transformation. If you guys have any questions or comments, please ask them on Facebook Live and Twitch, and Caleb will relay them to me. If there's any questions that you have that you want to know about maybe contracts, please feel free, because I know this is a lot of information. I know some of it's probably going right over your head and you're feeling overwhelmed, because it is a lot, and I'm trying to go through so much in such a short amount of time. So if there's any questions, please feel free to ask, and we'll talk about it, because it's a lot. It really is. So let's get into global contracts, because global contracts is what's going on right now. And so what is going on? Well, global contracts are everybody is under a global contract. That means anybody who incarnates in life agrees that there are certain things about life that are true. That means that life and death happens. There are certain world leaders that are going to happen during certain times of life. Countries are supposed to be certain ways. There's going to be certain wars during life. Certain natural disasters, viruses, economics, all sorts of things that we agree on, that this is the way the world is going to work. Currency, in order for us to understand as a collective. Because remember, life isn't just about our journey. It's about a global journey as well, an evolution of who we are as souls. And so we even have to take collective, like the coronavirus and what's going on right now. Right now, even though this is not part of my contract, the coronavirus or the riots right now, what is under my contract is that I have to bear witness to this. I have to understand that this is going on in the world because there are so many people that are contracted to go through this chaos so that they can learn to grow, and it could teach other people from afar that aren't involved how to grow. And so right now the world is looking, and we're seeing chaos everywhere. And there's some people that are going out into the world and ready to fight and stand up with, Black Lives Matter, All Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, all sorts of color lives matter. And these are the things that we get tangled up in. And so so we have to understand when it's our contract, when we choose to involve our contracts, and when it's not our contract and we have to step away. So for let's say, like I said earlier, for me, this is not involving me. I am a very active person and I respect all walks of life, but I understand when my contracts are around, and I understand when it's probable for me to take part in something, and when I don't need to get involved a lot. Because I know that in certain things right now, I can't change certain things because there is global contracts happening. This is fate, people. I can't change it no matter what, because it is fated to do this in this world. So but I have a choice on how I'm going to react to it. I choose not to get upset, even though there's a lot of reason to be upset. I choose not to do this because I know then it affects my life. And sadly, I do feel for what has happened. I really do. But at the same time, I cannot allow myself to get involved to the point of so much anger that it affects my life. And so we have to learn to start to understand that we can be involved and still advance ourselves in different ways without being these things. And these souls that are looting and fighting and killing have to go through this in order for them to grow, to realize, to get to the point that, you know what, this is not the way to do things. But trust me when I say this, every single one of you have gone through that in your past. You know, we have TV now and we have all this, but every single one of you has damaged things, has been a murderer, has been a murderee, has been raped, has been a rapist. We've all done horrible things. We've all acted very immature. We've all acted out of anger and irrationality. In order to get to the points we are now, we all have to go through it. So we have to change our mind. We have to change our focus, change our perspective. Because remember, it comes back to neutrality. You know, you got to balance the light and the darkness. You got to balance the positive charge and the negative charge in order for you to understand what is really going on. And so these global contracts are must. They have to happen for life to happen. I mean, if we didn't agree that we would be coming on planet Earth, because all the souls that are coming on planet Earth agree, just like all the souls that go on the planets around Sirius and Orion and all that stuff, they all agreed to be on, you know, all these other planets. And so we have this agreement and how these economies, how this world is going to work. And so you have to learn that what is going on is an agreement right now. It is fate to happen. But you have a choice how you're going to react. If you're going to go on Facebook and call people stupid and call people animals and stuff like that, then guess what? You are going to create a cycle contract of being in anger, being in suffering every time a global contract happens. Because it is your job to say, you know what, this is not a part of me. I can fight a different way without becoming angry and shunning people and fighting with my fellow people. There's a lot of ways we can change the world, but we can't change the world fighting on Facebook or fighting on Instagram or whatever. We have to go out in the world and take action, not the way that's going on, but we have to see what our contracts are. And so we have to learn that these global contracts, we all agreed that this would happen. We all agreed that this is what's going to go on in the world. And so I want you guys to understand that, because this is a huge idea of what's going on. And when you can understand that this is a humanity agreement, then we can start to say, okay, well, where is my contract in this? What part do I have to play to it? Do I have to play in this contract at all? If not, then remove yourself from it. Why create so much unnecessary anger and pain and suffering for you? You don't have to. You know, the coronavirus came and went. It didn't affect my life one bit. And whether you believe the coronavirus is real, not real, if the numbers of sick people were true or not, and that the fact of the matter is, because I chose to remove myself from it and it wasn't part of my contract, it didn't come anywhere around me. And that's choice and fate at the same time. So we have to look at that. One of the last things I want to get into is continual life contracts. What is a continual life contract? Is that the same as a cycle contract? Yes and no. So a continual life contract is many lives, something that happens over many lives. So it's a contract repeated. This is what we call karma, okay? Karma is not out to punish you. It's not out to get you. It's to tie one lesson into another. So back in my Egyptian days, when I lived here maybe 12,000, 15,000 years ago, even before the civilization of ancient Egypt came, I was already here. After my days in Sirius, maybe I was supposed to learn certain things. And after I learned certain things, because I wasn't a certain evolutionary, like I didn't have a certain maturity in my evolution, then what ends up happening is sometimes those lessons are either rolled over into several lifetimes until you fulfill it, or they are bounded by another contract way down in a different point in your life. And so a lot of times these continual life contracts are things that are repeated over and over. We think of it as, a lot of people think, well, if you commit suicide, then you're just going to keep repeating the life over until you learn not to commit suicide. That is not true at all. Sometimes that does happen, but a lot of times it doesn't. It depends on the contract and what they're meant to learn. Sometimes it's just a one-time deal for that moment, and that's it. Sometimes it is a continual life contract that is meant to repeat over several lifetimes. Maybe there's something that needs to be repeated over several lifetimes so that you have the maturity to understand it as you evolve, so that you can understand it on a deeper level way down the line until the contract is fulfilled. So there is so many ways. And so I really hope that a lot of you understand and start to change your idea about karma, because when you say to somebody, oh, well, karma is going to get you, that's wishing horrible things on somebody. Even if you think they deserve it, that is a horrible thing to say. And I really hope we start to detach ourselves from this idea that karma is this evil, bad thing that's out to get you, that's just going to punish you if you do bad things, because it is not like that. So I know for a lot of times, especially I've had students that say, you know what, Miss Raina, I'm really angry at religious people. I don't know what it is. Everything, the moment I hear God or Jesus or anything religious, I just, Allah, whatever, I just start going nuts. It just drives me nuts. And I just like nails on a chalkboard. And I said, well, why? And they're like, I don't know why. I don't know why this happens, but it just does. Every time I just want to turn off a switch on my head so I don't hear them anymore, and just, and then I say, well, have you ever thought about why this happens, like past lives, anything like that, why, what's going on? Well, no, and that, well, I was like, well, maybe this is something that you're carrying over. Maybe this is a continual life contract. Maybe that this is a lesson that's coming over from past lifetimes, that's carrying over until you learn to understand why people believe in religion and why people believe in spirituality and why people, do this stuff in order for this. Because it's our job as we advance to learn to let go of our anger from past lives. I know there's a lot of people that come into life, even me, this lifetime. I came into, this lifetime fearing war and not wanting to go back to war, because the last 3 lives I've had were horrible. I fought wars, and it ended up really terribly for me, and I just didn't want to be a part of it, and that fear kicked in. So I was so anti military and everything like that, because I didn't want to go to war. And so getting back to people, like a couple of my clients that had an issue with religion, or people who were religious and always preaching about stuff, they had to learn to let go of their pain and suffering from a past life, and that continual contract carried over until they learned to come to an understanding, well, if that's what someone wants to believe, that's fine. Even if they're shoving it down our throats, even if that, we still have to learn how to deal with how we feel. And a lot of times that ends up happening. And like I said, with suicide and all these other things, that we think that are just going to be repeated, sometimes, yes, sometimes you will have that, but a lot of times, no. Sometimes it may be you date the same person over and over, and that maybe you see one person or 2 souls over and over and over that treat you really bad until you learn how to break out of it. So remember, all these contracts tie into each other. Everything flows smoothly into each other. It's only you, when you start to fight your contract and try to make something be what it's not, is when extreme chaos starts coming in. So let's talk. Oh, I still got a few minutes. So let's talk about one last thing: past, present, and future. And honestly, there's so much more I want to go through on my notes, and I just not gonna happen, like I said. So we'll get through this, and then the rest of it we'll probably put on a session show maybe, and or if you guys have any questions and that. But past, present, and future. So what do contracts have to deal with past, present, and future? Well, it's when we need healing in current events. So what does that mean? So a lot of times we can heal, like if we have something that needs to be healed in the present, because remember, the present is the only true thing. Past and present really don't exist. Past and future really don't exist. It's only present. So if we have something that needs to be healed, and say like it was caused by our past, we can actually heal our future and our past and our present by healing what's going on right now. And you sit there and you say, well, how can that happen? Well, because remember, when fate comes in to teach you something, you can actually change how you view. Because remember, what's causing chaos is having the understanding about what is going on with our past. So hold on one second. We have a question. How can you find out about our past? Actually, you know what, Jody? That is actually a good question. And there is a lot of things we can do to find out about our past. And I know we're going to get off topic a little bit, but I really want to answer this question. So it depends on really what we want to find out about our past. So if we're talking about contracts, or if we're talking about past lives, those are different things. And so if we got to ask ourselves, well, why do I want to learn about my past? So if it's healing about something that I want to heal about now, then we have to look at maybe our past contracts rather than just past lives. If it's something that maybe we want to figure out, like, oh, I just want to know my past lives and see what it is. Maybe I was someone famous, maybe I was someone not. Then past life regression and hypnosis is probably the easiest. You can learn. You don't even need past life regression actually. If you learn to meditate and pure, like I meditate in pure darkness. I don't hear anything. I don't see anything. I don't think anything. It's just a solid there. I can pull energy and transfer that into any of my past lives when I get to that state. And so a lot of times that's actually how I do this work that I was talking about, healing a current issue and with the past and the present and the future and tying them all together, because I do that. So a lot of times I'll sit in a meditative state, and this takes a while. So, Jody, if you're looking to find out your past, remember that you have to have patience, because you have to get to a point where your mind sees nothing. And so I always meditate in pure darkness where there's nothing but just my thoughts. I have no body, I have nothing. And so she says, I want know what I'm here to fix this time. Okay. So she wants to know what she's here to. She wants to know what she's here to fix, and that. Well, that's easy. That is the easiest. You don't need your past to do that. All you have to do is sit down and look at yourself. And one of the things that I suggest, Jody, is actually writing, like doing a life review kind of, is sit down and actually look at the problems or look at the challenges that you have. And go over your emotions and say, on a daily basis, am I angry? Am I sad? Do I have insecurities? What are my insecurities? Where do they lead to? Do I have issues in dating? And pick apart your life and really start to unfocus, because you don't need any special powers. You don't need any special meditations to do this. And this is an easy thing for anybody to do. And I'm so glad you asked this, Jody. This is such a great question. But you can actually look by doing a life review just with paper and pen, and actually breaking down things that are in your life that you seem to run into all the time. You can actually understand the patterns and the contracts that you're actually in. So I knew, part of my healing that was going on, just for an example, Jody, is that I knew that when my heart had issues, I knew that I had a lot of unresolved anger issues, but I never paid attention to it because I was always running around doing stuff, softball, football, and I just didn't see it anymore until it all came to a bubble. And so what I did was, while I was sick, is I sat down and I wrote everything down. I said, okay, what seems to be the problem? Why I have pain in my chest? Well, why do I have pain in my chest? What do I feel? I feel angry. Well, why do I feel angry? Well, I feel angry because of this and this. And I just kind of broke things down over and over. And I did a lot of writing. It took several weeks for me to understand where it was coming from. And I realized that there was a lot of unresolved issues from my childhood about getting beat up all the time, having physical abuse happen to me all the time, that I never really let go, that was carrying over into my current relationships. Because I was like, you know what, I know people aren't going to understand the type of person I am, and I'm okay with that, but why does it seem like everyone's just like so pushed back right away? And I realized that my energy was coming across because I was my child in me was so defensive because of what had happened in my past, that it was affecting my present and how I released that. So once I realized where it was coming from, I was able to come back and actually just start working on myself and start realizing that these contracts were not personal. One of the best things I can say to you, Jody, is whatever's going on, or anybody in here, whatever's going on in your life is not personal. When you shift your idea of your mind from things being personally done to you to lessons and things to make you grow, you're able to understand things from a third party perspective, if that makes any sense. So, but if I didn't answer everything, or if you have more questions, Jody, when I'm done with the show, please reach out to me on Facebook and we'll chat for a little while, because the show's got to end. But thank you so much. I really appreciate your question. And if anyone else has questions, we're going to wrap up the show. But yes, thank you so much, Jody. I appreciate it. And so yes, so I guess we're not going to get in it, but that's kind of what we're talking about with past, present, and future. So these contracts are everything in your life is contract, to wrap up the show. And you really have to understand the contracts and look at things. If you're having trouble with what's going on in your life, then start doing a life review of the past 6 months, the past year, the past 5 years, and start breaking things down and start looking at things. And if you don't remember, ask your parents. If your parents are still alive, if you still have friends from your childhood or whatever, ask them. Say, what kind of child was I? How was I? And see the answers that you get, and so you're able to compare them to now, because I guarantee you haven't changed. A lot of us really haven't changed as much, as we're still carrying that child in us, and that child is the one that needs to be healed the most. So, all right, guys, that is the show for tonight. I am sorry I couldn't get through everything, but I think Caleb and I are going to make the rest of this a session show, just kind of so we can kind of get this done. But yeah, it would be a 3-part show, and we got to really get into what's going on in the world as of what's going on, because we're going to talk next week about what's going on in the world, and not just contracts, but we're going to learn how to detach from the world, and we're going to learn how to separate ourselves so that we don't become involved in all this anger and pain and suffering, that we can move on to a higher form of consciousness and grow through love and compassion. So, all right, guys, as always, follow us on our Facebook at facebook.com/Transcendental Transformation. YouTube channel is the same thing. Visit my website, soulandspiritguide.com, and to sign up to receive VIP access and hidden shows and all sorts of good stuff and special guest offers. Email us with your questions at transcendentaltransformations, that's plural, at gmail.com. And always remember to believe in yourself, and it's not our abilities, our talents that make us who we are, but it is our choices. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.